You survived another week. Thank you for listening, downloading, and subscribing to episode 342 of the Black Man with a Gun Show. This week, I got a chance to interview professional shooter Max Michel, and he gives us some dynamite shooting tips. We're going to be talking about hunting season. And speaking of that, Barbara Baird from women'soutdoornews.com talks about Duck Dynasty. In the news, there were some shots fired at the nation's capital, at the Capitol. Yeah, there's some stuff going on in Maryland. And the importance of relationships. All this and more, coming up next. This show is just for the cool people in the gun community. My name is Kenn Blanchard, and I talk about and to newsmakers, producers, and things that matter to you. Life, freedom, and gun rights. I know what you're going through. I'm your friend and brother from another mother, known around the world as the Black Man with a Gun, and this is what cool sounds like. Welcome to the Black Man with a Gun Show. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Relationships. You know, life is short, and the older you get, the more you feel it. The shorter it is, actually. People lose their capacity to walk, to run, travel, think, and experience life. And I just realize how important it is to use the time that I have. And I thank you for sharing these minutes with me. Next up, an interview with a guy that can shoot his butt off. Max Michel, here on the Black Man with a Gun Show. Max Michel, welcome to the Black Man with a Gun Show.
Cool. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Man, you're a champion shooter. How'd you get so good?
It's been a lot of years, I guess. I started when I was really young. My dad got me started shooting when I was just 5 years old, and started competing when I was about 8 or 9 years old.
Get out.
And yeah, it's just something that's always been a passion of mine. You know, I just like every kid, they want to do what dad does, and my dad was a competitive shooter at the time, and it was just a way for us to spend time together. So, I mean, honestly, we would shoot a competition twice a week, and we would train 4 days a week. So it kept us very busy, whether we were training or loading ammunition, cleaning brass, getting it prepped for loading, cleaning guns, things like that. My entire childhood was basically surrounded, around the safety of firearms and, how to become better at using firearms. So just at a young age, I just got really passionate about something that I loved, and it happened to be firearms. I still, I did other competitive sports, but when I was 13, I decided at that time, do I give up football, baseball, basketball, possibilities of scholarships or those to move on to do full-time shooting even more so? Because balancing, the competitive sports as a kid and shooting was getting more and more difficult. And, I just decided to go the route of shooting because I felt at that time, at 13 years old, I had a better chance of doing something that I love to do in shooting versus the competitive sports. And I found the U.S. Army shooting team when I was 13 years old, and that's kind of that avenue that I thought, hey, if I hang in here, for 4 more years or so, I have a possibility of being a pro shooter in the Army, and what better way to kind of serve my country than that? So it was pretty good opportunity at that time.
And that's what you did?
Yeah, so I set aside, time and worked hard and met the guys in the Army, and when I was 16 years old, they sent me a letter in the mail saying that, not only would I be able to be a part of the Army, but I can join their special unit, which was the Army Marksmanship Unit, as soon as I turned 17. And then that's how it worked. That's how it happened. I met those guys at several matches and got a letter in the mail from the coach. And my 17th birthday, with both parents' consent, I swore into the U.S. Army.
All right, man. All right.
Yeah.
So did your 4 years, got out?
Actually, I did a little more than 4. I did just over 10 years. And some people will say, hey, man, you're crazy, for doing 10 years and then getting out, you didn't get that retirement. And, yeah, I look back and, I'd only have 5 years left now for retirement. But, it was just the opportunity was there for me to move on and do other things. But during my time in the Army, it was great, man. I did 10 years there at the U.S. Army shooting team, and we had several missions when I was there. Obviously number one was to compete and win, and that was our biggest mission for my first 2 years I was there. But from 99 to 01, and then September of 01, once 9/11 hit and the war started to kick off, our plans changed. Our missions changed, and we still were there to compete and win, because that's kind of how we justified our existence. We had to show that we were the best at what we do, or we weren't going to have a unit any longer. So we did that through national, world level, and even Olympic events in some of our shooting disciplines that we had. And then we also helped with recruiting. I was on a recruiting mission for a long time. I would go to high schools, trade shows, air shows, whatever it was. I would kind of tell my Army story and try to get people to join the Army. And we actually had, part of our job was to get so many leads per year to different recruiters throughout the country. So that was a big part of our mission. And then finally it was enhancing combat readiness, and we did that a couple of ways. One was through testing of equipment, where basically, where I was at Fort Benning, we had 3rd ID there, we had Range Battalion there, so some of those guys, before they would go out and actually purchase a large number of an optic or some sort of piece of equipment, whether it was me or some of our other guys, we would test it in competition against some of the best shooters in the world to figure out what was the fastest and the most effective piece of equipment out there for those guys. So we would do it that way, but also through training. A lot of what I do in a competitive shooting world is I try to put as many rounds downrange as accurately as possible, but as quickly as possible. And that's navigating through obstacles, shooting around windows and doors and all these different things that is very applicable to the battlefield today. So we were able to give back through our training programs as well. So during my time in the Army, it was great. I did a lot of things, won a lot of championships, met some great people, but at that 10-year mark, or just a little bit before, I actually, once I re-enlisted again, when I was about 8 years in, I realized it was my time to get out. And those last couple of years that I was in, I was just, doing all that I could for the Army, but making sure I was setting myself up for a life after Army.
I heard that, man. It's like you've been rolling smart from the beginning. That's pretty cool, man. I really appreciate that insight. How about SIG, man? How'd you pick that?
SIG, it was just the right place at the right time. It was, I guess, back in 2007, in 05, SIG offered a large sum of money if you can break some world records and actually win the world championship in the same year. And in 05, nobody did it. 06, nobody did it. And then 07 is when I broke all the records and won the world championship. In 05 I did. I won the world championship, but I missed the world record that they wanted you to break by just maybe a second or so. And that's kind of how my relationship started with SIG, because I'm from New Orleans, and that was the same year Katrina hit, and in fact it was the same month Katrina hit. It was maybe a week later. I wasn't even supposed to go to the competition, but just decided to go last minute and go out there and I won it. But and SIG really badly wanted to give me the money for my family, obviously for losing everything in the hurricane, but they just couldn't. The way the rules were stated, obviously I didn't break the world record, but I did win it, and that's kind of how our relationship got started. We started talking for a couple years after that. I would see him at SHOT Show and the trade shows, and so that's how that started. But there was a couple other companies as well when I was getting out that I toured and I visited with. But for me, the reason why I chose SIG, I can sit here and tell you it's because of the guns and the equipment. That to hell and back reliability. The guns are going to work when you need them to. Those kinds of things, and the accuracy, dependability, all those things are there with the company. But the real reason why I chose SIG was just because they made me feel at home. Honestly, the company is completely professional from any department throughout the company, whether it's a CEO or anybody. They're just completely professional. They treat me like family. They treat me like I'm a part of the team. And I live in New Orleans. I live thousands of miles away from the factory. So when I go out there and I spend time, it means a lot to me to have that relationship, with the company. And that's truly why I chose SIG, was not purely because of the product so much as the people behind the product and the way that they stand behind their product. And everybody's pulling in the same direction. And it kind of gave me that feeling of that military home sense that that I was missing when I was getting out of the Army. Everybody's pulling in the same direction for the same common goal, and that's why I chose SIG. They're just great folks to work with.
Yeah, man, relationship is like the buzzword for me this week. Everything that's stayed has become of or because of relationships.
You got it. And I'm a loyal guy too, so once I get that relationship, I just want to keep it forever.
Good stuff. you train people too, right?
I do. I have my own training academy down in New Iberia, Louisiana, which is maybe an hour and a half or 2 hours west of New Orleans. And that's what that's a big passion of mine. For many years, I thought it was all about winning world championships and national championships and all those cool things, but that was really just selfish, to be honest. And I've over the years I'm very much self-taught. My father got me to a certain point, and once I got into the Army, I didn't have a coach. I trained myself every day, and I was lucky enough at the time to be able to shoot 5,000 rounds a week, every week for 8 to 10 months out of the year.
Good gracious!
And so I didn't have to pay for it, and that was my job at the time. It was just go out and shoot and learn how to get better so you can train others. And that was the thing. So now I'm able to relay. I understand how and why the firearms operate the way that they do, and what I do relates to combative style shooting as far as law enforcement, military, self-defense. So I'm able to give back now and relay that information to others so they can better understand it. And it's quickly became a passion of mine. I guess I started teaching for myself like maybe 10 years ago in that ballpark. And if I go out and win a national or world championship, that's great. But for me to go out and train a group of, law enforcement, military guys, or those that are wanting to get better at their sport or defending their families and protecting their families, that's even better for me. So, in fact, I have a course I'm leaving for tomorrow. I just got back from a championship 2 days ago, but I'm out going teaching tomorrow, and that's just what I do. I love it. I love training.
So what's your URLs? How can we find out about the courses and how to follow you? Because I'm thinking myself, man, I'd like to check you out.
Yeah, for sure. You can check me out on my website, maxmichel.com. That's MAXMICHEL.com. That's my website, and you can also find me on Facebook, facebook.com/maxmichel.us.
And were you in the Hollywood celebrity shoot maybe like 3 years ago?
Not a Hollywood one. I did the Matt Light celebrity shootout, which is a football player thing. Yeah. There was
a Hollywood celebrity shoot, and I was trying to remember whether I had met you before, because I think I met your father or met a guy that I thought was the same guy, but nope. You must be a new guy, and that's a good thing.
You got it.
3 tips, man, that you can help. I'm trying to shoot better. What 3 things pop into your mind that I should be doing?
Yeah, I think a few things that can help folks quick, because I do get this question a lot, and I'll be completely honest with you. I don't do anything different or crazy. I don't have targets that these high-end electronic target systems or anything like that. I go back to the basics when I train, and I think you can't do it enough. So I think that 3 things that can really help someone out. Number 1 would be the fundamentals of speed shooting. And when I say that, I mean the stance, grip, and sight pictures. They can't go unnoticed. If you really cannot progress, unless you can hit the target, obviously. And if you can hit the target quickly, well, that's even better. So I continue to work on my stance, which is a wide aggressive platform, wider than most people out there, with my strong foot slightly to the rear for stability. I want to make sure I have my knees bent so I have 70% of the weight in the balls of my feet, and my torso is going to be very much upright and relaxed but leaned over at the waist. And I want to take my arms as far as I can possibly take them without locking the elbows, so that way my elbows can be used as somewhat of a shock absorber. So basically you want to be in a fighting stance. So as the gun lifts and recoil, you can get right back on target as quickly as possible. And then the next thing is going to be the grip. Make sure you get as high as possible in that grip, and you're getting as much contact with the gun. When you talk about grip, it's a leverage battle on the pistol. The lower you hold the gun, the more it's going to lift and recoil. Again, taking longer for the sights to come back down the target. So if you see some of these guys, you see myself or some of the other pro shooters kind of running around on video or in person, and you see these guys are shooting so quickly, and it's like there's no way they can see the sights that fast. Well, they can, or they wouldn't be hitting the targets. So, and how are they seeing the sights faster than you or the next guy? That's the question. Right. And it comes down to the stance and grip. So if you can really master those 2 things, well, guess what? Now you can shoot quickly while remaining accurate, and you just won the battle. And the next thing is in regards to the fundamentals of speed shooting is sight pictures. I think for years, especially, me being in the Army and other guys being in some kind of specific training like that, for years we've always been told, sight picture was front sight in the middle of the rear notch, light on both sides, you're focused on the front sight, the target's blurry, kind of a thing. And that is That is correct to a certain degree, but when we're talking speed shooting or combative shooting, there's 3 different types of sight pictures I use, and I'll just kind of cover them real quickly here for you. Number one is a flash sight picture, and that's basically within 5 yards. I'm looking at the target, and all I'm getting back from the sight is I have to get some kind of data back from the sight to assure me that I'm lined up in the sights, and I'm sure that I'm going to hit the target. So I need to, basically what I always say is I need to see what I need to see, and that's it. Nothing more, nothing less. So I don't need to see a perfect sight picture on a wide-open target at 5 yards. I just need to see a flash sight picture. So as soon as that front sight flashes back down from recoil and I get a glimpse of it, I'm shooting. Now, as the target gets further, let's say 5 to maybe 8 or 9 yards in that ballpark, well, now I'm using my floating sight picture, and that's where the front sight flashes back down, but I'm starting to gather more I'm starting to gather more information on that sight. So now the sights aren't completely stable, but they're floating within the center of that target as the sight's lifting. And then if my next sight picture would be pretty much 8 to 10 yards and further out, is what I call my focus sight picture, and that's where it flashes down, then it begins to float, and now it's completely stable, and I'm focused on that front sight. So as the target becomes further away from me, or if it's smaller, so that means it could be a headshot at 5 yards. So if the target is further away or closer to me, but it might be a smaller target, the distance and the difficulty of that target will always dictate how much of the sight I need to see. And I don't want to see any more than I need to because it takes time to wait for the eyes to adjust back to that front sight, if that makes sense. So that's kind of a long way. Yeah, so that's kind of a long way of basically making sure folks are continuing to work on their fundamentals because, just because you can shoot while moving is great, but if you can't hit the target while you're moving, it does you no good. So those 3 fundamentals of speed shooting is really big. And then the second thing is making sure you have a plan, is some sort of a training plan. When guys go out to the range, that's the biggest issue I see is they'll show up with 200 rounds, 300 rounds, whatever your allotment is for the day or the week. You show up and, okay, what do I work on? Well, everybody wants to shoot what they're good at because you see positive results, and it feels good. I mean, I'll be honest, I do it sometimes too. It feels good to go out there and build up that confidence. But
Right.
But you need to make a plan. You need to say, okay, this is what I'm good at, this is what I'm bad at. Let's work on what I'm good at for 30% of the day, and let's work on what I'm bad at for 70% of the day. To really make sure that those weaknesses can become your strengths. And the easiest way to figure out what you're good and bad at is everybody knows it personally. But let's say you go to a local level competition, or maybe it was just your last time you were out on the training range. Make a list of the things you did wrong and the things that you did right, and that's how you build your plan. Okay, these are the 10 things that I think I can work on. Let's put that into my program next time I go out to the range, things like that. So basically, have a plan, make sure that you're working on the proper things to get you better. And then last, I feel dry fire. Dry fire techniques, obviously no ammunition within the room, empty magazines, and just work on your stance and your grip and your draw, reloads, moving the guns, transitions. And if you're a combative guy, maybe you're a law enforcement military guy, maybe you're working on things that can help you be better at what you do, whether it's a tactical reload or whatever. Maybe you're working with a new piece of equipment, or you have to work where you're holding your a shield in front of you. Whatever it is, you can work on those techniques without wasting ammunition. And actually working on the proper techniques in dry fire. And dry fire is important because you can really do it at about 50% speed. I do most of my dry fire at half speed, which sounds crazy, but when the buzzer goes off, or if any kind of situation came up with a threat that I had to protect my family, I'm not going to go 50% speed. I'm going to react as quickly as I possibly can. But what I will be able to do is revert back to my training that I've taught myself step by step, by the numbers in dry fire at half speed that you can't teach yourself if you're going 100% the entire time. You remember 2 things if you go 100% speed, the beginning and the end. You're remembering nothing in between. And that in-between portion is really that muscle memory that you're building. And so that's important. So those are the 3 things I would help folks with, is the fundamentals of speed shooting, making sure you have a training plan, as well as dry fire.
Man, that was awesome.
I hope I didn't bore you too much.
No, man. I was taking notes. I was like, shoot, this guy's a champion for real. Not just in shooting, but just in explaining and being real, man. I really appreciate you.
Cool, man. Thank you, yeah.
I wish you safe travels, man, on this next trip you're about to go on. And I'm going to be looking at your website and trying to figure out how I can take a class.
You got it. Yeah, please do. I have plenty of videos on YouTube, as well as free information on YouTube for different techniques that I use. But yeah, I'd love to see you in a course sometime soon.
All right, Max, man. All the best to you, brother.
Thank you. Take care.
All right. This show has been sponsored by CrossbreedHolsters.com. Check them out, CrossbreedHolsters.com. All right, prior for me coming downstairs and hitting the my little studio here, I was waiting for the guys who hunt on my property to come out. They park on my property but walk past because I only got like a small little acreage. But they kind of like, I'm like the last house before the woods. So they kind of park there and tromp through. Well, hunting season has finally begun here in Maryland, and the archers are out right now. To me, fall is officially here. It's beautiful when the leaves change and the temperature gets a little cooler. All my hunting buddies have already begun repairing and setting stands and blinds. Have you started that stuff yet? Are you one in 5? I think I quoted that the ratio is 1 in 5 of the gun owners are hunters. Some of you guys have already reconned the deer trails and put down feed corn, and you're already starting to see what you might need before muzzleloader season starts. Just got a new link called huntercourse.com for hunter education if you're a new shooter, new hunter. They're out of Alabama. And speaking of Alabama, I got some new folks I want to give a shout out to with a company called deepcreekcoverscent.com. They create hygiene and apparel treatment products designed to cover human scent. They're supposed to mimic the outdoors. They make handmade cover scent soap bars, scented hair and body wire, scented field sprays, and body cover sprays. You can check them out at DC Cover Scent. And let me know what you think. Also check out huntercourse.com too. I was coaching a person today shooting at the indoor range near NSA and found out some shocking truths about the new Maryland gun laws. Believe it or not, the gun registration is here, baby. Right here. Locally in Maryland, they just changed the gun laws. I was in a gun shop that had no pistols for sale. When I was there a couple of days ago, almost every gun was sold. It was a gun rush like you've never seen. But now, after October 1st, this is what the law has done. You must have a Maryland qualification license before you can purchase a firearm. We have a new form, 77R, I think it's called. Now, what's even bad about the form, it's going to cost about $200 before you can buy a pistol. And it's not retroactive. If you have a DD-214, it doesn't matter. If you have a concealed carry permit in the Maryland state, doesn't matter. You have to have this MQL or nothing. So there was a whole bunch of like kind of affluent rich folks kind of walked in there after the fact. Like this one guy said, excuse me, but I'd like to get a 1911. And there was like none on the counter. It was like of all the counters, it was bare. And the guy says, do you have your Maryland qualification license? And the guy goes, no, but I carry concealed. He says, doesn't matter. Other guy says, well, I have a DD-214. Doesn't matter. Man, they were pissed. Because for the last 9 months, we've been kind of going through it. And then there was a court case where Maryland shall issue, Associated Gun Clubs of Baltimore, and Maryland Shooters, I believe, all sued the state of Maryland. And a judge threw it out based on something. It's not looking good for the home team at the moment. So what's even worse about all of that is that Maryland State Police, which is enforcing this thing, hasn't made any requirements yet. So there's a on the books law that nobody can buy anything, and there's no rules on how to get it. So there's going to be like a $50 fingerprint thing that you can't get. There's a qualification process that's not even been created yet. Oh man, it's a catch-22. It's totally unconstitutional. And I'm thinking about moving for real now. I mean, it just got worse. So we'll see. Also, did you hear about the shooting at the Capitol today? Yeah, that was some crazy stuff there. The person who did it, she's identified as 34-year-old Miriam Carey of Stamford, Connecticut. She had a small child in her car, and she tried to ram a White House barricade right around 2:30 p.m. And that's like a no-go. There's like U.S. Capitol Police, Park Police, D.C. Metro, and Uniformed Secret Service all in that little spot. So they merged on her like hornets and bees, and she was shot at the scene, and her child that was in the car has been put in protective custody. Meanwhile, the government is shut down. I think there was a U.S. Capitol Police veteran of 23 years was injured. I want to pull your coat to a training outfit that I am familiar with called the International Training Inc., or ITI. They provide really good security training for U.S. government and U.S. military types and corporates. They're having a one-day tactical shotgun course on November 1st down at their Virginia facility. And this group does high-speed driving and shooting, and this is where I got all my stuff from, like way back in the day. If you're interested, send me a note, and I'll send you a link to the flyer. I'll try to put it up on the show notes for episode 342, just in case I forget. Send me a note if you're interested. It's real tactical stuff, real good group there. ITI. Want to look it up? Look it up. Look up International Training Inc., or ITI, and you'll see what I'm talking about. They also call themselves G4S GS, which I don't get, but they're ITI. High speed, low drag. And that's it for the news for right now. There's always something going on, but that's all I want to talk about right now. Cool. All right, next up is my sister, Barbara Baird. Hey, Barb.
Hey, black man with a gun. You gotta admit, it must be fun for big city newspaper writers to fashion book reviews about the Duck Commander, Phil Robertson's new book, titled Happy, Happy, Happy. That is if they review it at all. If they do review it, they can get their little jabs in at a backwoods, redneck, God-fearing guy in subtle ways, while in the meantime Phil is laughing happy, happy, happy all the way to the bank. Phil's book, released in May 2013, published by Simon & Schuster, hit number 1 by May 17th on the New York Times bestseller list, and it's stayed there all summer and into this fall. Featuring his philosophy on faith, family, ducks in that order, the book provides more insight into the evolution of the man who is the patriarch of Duck Dynasty TV show and who is known in the outdoor industry as the Duck Commander. So I went looking for book reviews. Surely there should be a lot of them online. Not so fast. From Vox magazine. If you don't like reading, don't have time to get the book, or aren't lucky enough to have him come speak somewhere near you, simply watch the show. You'll understand him and his family as soon as you start watching. Or, on second thought, maybe you won't quite understand them so quickly. They do live in a fairly small Louisiana town, after all. And from the New York Times Sunday Book Review. One chapter, Redneck Caviar, declares that rule number 11 for living happy, happy, happy is to suck the head of a crawfish. You'll want to do it again and again. And if you can find a nice, pretty country girl who can cook and carries her Bible, Phil advises readers, now there's a woman. She might even be ugly, but if she cooks squirrels and dumplings, then that's the woman you go after. Out of all the information in the book, and yes, I've read it, these are the quotations the New York Times chooses. The book gets very little mention from other large publications. USA Today practically ignores it and includes books that are about Rose Kennedy and Freud's mistress in its hot books for summer. However, Gail Wellborn over at the Examiner appears to get it. She writes, "It's a narrative of genuine choice and change about God, past mistakes, the importance of family, duck calls, and living a life of faith." You know, I think Gail and the 11 point whatever million viewers of Duck Dynasty get it. What this country needs is a good dose of Duck Dynasty and what it offers, and when one of its family members writes a book, hey, let's see some reviews that reflect the core of that book and not just a lifestyle judgment. We like to think that the women at our e-zine, Women's Outdoor News, would be right at home next to Phil and the boys in a duck blind on a marsh somewhere. Or hey, you know, we could certainly hunt with the best of Willie's Buck Commanders too. To read more about the adventures of real women who are out there hunting, shooting, and fishing, check out womensoutdoornews.com, and thanks, Ken.
Hey, you're welcome. Hey, let me tell you a Duck Dynasty story. My niece came over during the summer, spent like a week with us, and she turned us on to the Duck Dynasty crew. I had never paid any attention to it. Actually, doing the shot show last year, I think I walked past the Duck Commander himself, and I didn't even know who those guys were. There was this long, long line at the shot show for autographs and stuff, and I passed right by this guy and thought, wow, cool beard. Well, now we're like watching this stuff like all the time, and we love the show. And the other day, I bought the book Psychology from Uncle Si for my wife. And she was like laughing and saying, oh man, this is like great. And I thought, who would have knew? It's just good stuff. And then just the other day, instead of buying some flowers, I bought her this big old poster of Uncle Si saying, let's party or something. That's a fact, Jack. And I surprised her by putting it like behind the door in the bedroom. So when she closed the door, she'd see it. And she laughed and giggled and says, I got that guy in my room. Get him out of here. And she was laughing. And I thought, see, that's better than flowers. Now I got to put Uncle Si downstairs. But that's okay. This portion of the show has been sponsored by ErgoGrips.net. Small arms accessories built for high performance and control. Shooter focused. ErgoGrips.net. Talking to you makes my day. Thank you for listening to the show. This has been going on since 2007 when I really didn't know how far podcasts can go, but I did it so because I wanted to actually have a way to talk to people. I wanted to go around the country and maybe rent out hotel rooms and have conferences and talk on the regular. I really wanted to be out there and talk about life and gun stuff and share things and make you laugh and entertain you, but that wasn't cost effective. I had no platform to do it. So after being interviewed on somebody else's show, I decided, you know what? I could try this. So I took my laptop, which at the time I thought was high speed, but it was a PC falling to pieces all the time, hooked up with everything I could try to make it work, all types of software that crashed on a regular. And I tried my hand at podcasting, the Black Man with a Gun Live, and then the Black Man with a Gun Show, then the Urban Shooter Show, and then the Urban Shooter podcast. And it kept going. And because of you helped me survive another week. You did it. If I don't create something, I'll just about explode. I am an oil painter, artist, that kind of guy by design. The whole shooting thing, that just came by accident. I used to be next to the washer and the dryer in a really small brick house of an unfinished part of the house, freezing, talking on a microphone. And my wife, her second hobby is cleaning. So she was always washing something. So a lot of times I had the washer and the dryer sound in the background, trying to use noise compression and everything else, trying to keep that thing down. It was amazing. Then we moved and went out here to the country, and I claimed a room in the basement, still in the basement, still actually underneath the washer and the dryer of this house. But now I got a room that I can close the door, and my gear has improved. And I've been able to interview a lot of people and touch a lot of people's lives, and that really means something to me. A good day is when I talk to somebody new or an old friend that I haven't talked to in a long time. You know why? Because relationships matter. The older I get, the more I understand that you can have all the money, you can have a lot of things, but if you have nobody to talk to, nobody to share it with, nobody that's expecting you to do something, you're kind of just there. I've worked with a lot of people who had a lot of stuff, but they were empty on the inside. Most of the reason they bought, did, and, talked the way they talked was because they wanted something else. They didn't know that all they wanted was another person. And you're that person for me. So thanks. Gun rights, super important to me. It's about freedom. I got a chance to interview a lot of people that I have passed and been close to, because since I'm no threat to anybody, I'm known by importance, they talk, and I didn't forget. So I'm the guy who calls them for the birthday or calls them for whatever, and relationships have started, just like you and me. So for the past 20 years of my gun rights activism, it's gotten a little easier for me to talk to somebody. Even though I started off just a firearms instructor, probably like you, I was focused on counterterrorism and police stuff, and found out that my strength was in the people, not the products. And then as the podcast started to grow, I started getting like self-conscious and inferiority complex because I didn't have the latest AR to shoot. I live right outside the nation's capital now, and it costs a pretty penny to shoot at an indoor range, even if they let you draw out of a holster, which most of them don't. Most of them don't let you to shoot an AR. I just didn't have it. So I took the show in a different direction. It became a pro-gun variety show. It became a way that I could inspire and make you laugh, make you think. And I had some flubs now because it's all a work in progress. It's all me trying different things. Remember Zombie Strike? Man, that was a beautiful 2 years. Derek Ward was off the hook, man. He was writing this stuff, and then he would send it to me, and boom, off it went. Then I got like creative, and I'd try and do a voice, fail, but just kept plugging. And then there was a whole part of the Urban Shooter podcast crew that loved Zombie Strike. And just as many, maybe not, didn't like it, couldn't stand Zombie Strike. Dogged it at every chance they could without hurting my feelings. Unbelievable. But I learned. You know the stuff you like and stuff you don't. But it's hard to know what works without feedback. Now, I used to be up like late at night, sacrificing the ire of my wife, who's saying, "What are you doing down in that basement? You better not be looking at porn," which that's funny all by itself. But I was talking to you, and I have been for a while now. So thanks for being on the other side of the microphone. I actually tried comedy. Comedy is hard. Man, it's hard. Had an actual couple of comedians that they were trying, and I guess they had it hard too, because sometimes them jokers weren't funny. And after a couple of tries, I might have bounced them so you didn't hear them anymore. But we tried. This is all a journey for me. A good journey. Not only guns and stuff, I had shoot, don't shoot scenarios and inspirational moments that are almost straight out of my sermons. We got blues, R&B, classic rock, soul music, anything that I thought was American music that was a theme for this show. I threw it up there. It was there because I found out that singing makes me happy, even if I don't do it as well as the original artist. You know how nice it is to be with somebody you can actually trust to be a fool? That's what this is for me. I know sometimes you go, "Oh man, I'm going to fast forward to this part." And usually when somebody says that, then they go on a list that they're not my friend, they're just a consumer of the product. And that's okay. I've learned to say, those who understand me, I pull them closer. Those who just trying to see what's new and they don't get it or they don't like what they hear, that's fine. Learn to let that go. Took a while, but now, hey, 6 years later, podcast is still smoking and you're listening still. And I really appreciate that. And I've had like some cool people on this show. For my 100th episode, I had executive vice president of the NRA on here. Remember that? Episode 100? Wayne LaPierre, welcome.
Ken, good to be with you.
And man, that was really good. And it was like right at the beginning of the new year, and I asked him for some encouraging words for folks that listen to the show, and he said this:
"Stay strong." I mean, the attack is coming. I mean, we're going to be challenged in terms of this Second Amendment freedom, and we need to stand together and hold the line and protect this great American freedom. I hope that, the Obama administration campaigned all over the country and handed people flyers saying they'll always protect the Second Amendment. And I hope they keep that promise. And if they do, we'll be cheering for them. If they break that promise, we're ready, and we'll be standing strong to protect this Second Amendment freedom for all American citizens.
Amen, man. Amen. And so it was just like that. Unscripted. We were just kind of talking. I think we're actually in an elevator. Yeah. Long story with that one, too. But he isn't the only one. I mean, even in the future, like the new phenom, Coleon Noir.
Hey, what's going on, man?
And right before the NRA snagged him, I had him here on my show. And I asked him, what are you doing on YouTube? And he was like a regular dude, too.
Well, I'm a YouTuber. I guess you can consider me a blogger, though my blog is actually in hiatus at the moment. But what I do is I do video reviews of guns and gear, and then I also kind of do my own little version of advocating for Second Amendment rights on YouTube as well, with my level of commentary and things like that.
What's really been cool, over the years, I've been the in-between guy between the old and the new soldiers. Speaking of soldiers, here's Soldier of Fortune, editor, publisher, Lieutenant Colonel Robert K. Brown. Back in the day, man, everybody who was a mover and a shaker, or operator, special ops kind of guy, we read this guy's books. We read the magazines. We followed him because his sit rep was right on time. Remember that?
Well, my pleasure is always. It's always a pleasure to be able to talk with like-minded souls.
Like-minded souls. This guy's a hoot. He is all right and still around and kicking. And on this episode, he gave us the rundown on Soldier of Fortune like this.
Well, we started the first issue longer than I'd like to remember. Goes back to first issue came off the press way back in July of 1975.
Nice,
so
man.
We started out with just a bi-monthly, and then after a few months went to quarterly, then, from quarterly to bi-monthly to monthly, and been in the business and on the newsstands ever since.
And it's still rocking. And even in the latter days, like as far as a year ago, I got a chance to talk to Emily Miller, who's made a lot of history lately, wrote a book. When we first had our first conversation online, it was something else. And on my 300th episode, I had, we both interviewed each other, which was kind of cool. And that's another story all about that. But Emily's funny because she's right here in the DC area and everybody else knew about her before I did. And so I read her stuff and sent a note out to her by Gmail. And it's all about relationships. And at first it was kind of awkward because I felt like a stalker, but she tells the same story. But she'll tell you here on episode 300. This is what she said.
So a year ago when I started writing about guns, you tweeted to me, and I had no idea who you were, but all these people on Twitter were going, "It's the black man with a gun, it's the black man with a gun. Emily, you have to do his show." And you're such a big celebrity in the gun world, which I wasn't in before. So tell me where you even got this name, Black Man with a Gun, and what's the history?
And the history still continues. But you know the history because you've been with me for a while. You know, some people even think that the Black Man with a Gun is about race and just about gun control. I do got some history that nobody else shares, but it's just because I was born in the 60s, discoed in the 70s, hip-hopped in the 90s or the 80s, and what was I doing in the 90s? Oh, trying to get my groove on. But I realized around the Y2K time that life was short. Actually, life is too short to wake up in the morning with regrets. I've learned that you should love the people who treat you right, forget about the ones who don't, and believe that everything happens for a reason. And if you get a chance, take it. If it changes your life, let it. Nobody says it's going to be easy. They just promised it would be worth it. It's all about relationships, and I thank you for being in mine. Somebody I want to relate to. So we talk about speaking and software versus hardware. Rob had a really good statement. A lot of the conventions that we do, they're to meet the people because products change. I've also met really cool people that were photographers that were in other things other than the shooting world. And I add that to the show too, because we're not just one thing. And those who are just one thing are kind of hard to be around for a long time. So I add the pop culture stuff in here. There's the pop culture stuff like Comic-Cons and the artist stuff and food and restaurants. Even my cigar smoking is about relationships. I usually love the guys who can sit around and talk intelligently while we're puffing on a cigar, killing our lungs and polluting the air, but we love it. And then folks get mad because every once in a while I go off topic or off color and they say, "Oh, aren't you a man of the cloth?" I am. But I'm trying not to be that holier than thou guy. I'm just Kenn Blanchard. Kenn Blanchard that was law enforcement, security, personal protection, a U.S. Marine. I've been around people who talk regularly, who curse occasionally. Just because I don't do everything that you do doesn't make me strange or special. I just have a different relationship, again, with the God that I serve. And who I am means I can like you for who you are. That's what it really means. Doesn't mean I'm to be lifted up any higher than anybody else. And that's hard for some people because they expect that from a person of the cloth. And that's a whole different doctrine for me. My faith is my life. And because I believe what I believe, I don't have to beat you over the head with it. But I can talk to you if you need to. I can answer you if you need me to. I can be your friend if you need me to. That's what my faith does for me. And it's mixed in here with this gun show. And a lot of folks don't quite get it. But you do. And I thank you for that. So you see, it all comes down to relationships. Everything that I have, all the success, even the sponsorship that I have, Crossbreed Holster, the lead person of Crossbreed Holsters was like my second friend on Facebook. Yeah, ain't that something? So when he passed away suddenly, it was more to me than just a sponsor, an advertising person. I lost a friend. Well, you could say the same thing too. But it's just like a lot of people like that. And then my blogs, Freedom's Network, what else? Gun Rights Magazine, all friends. I mean, not the friends like Facebook. I'm talking real friends. I don't even have that many people. Like, I've seen some sites where there's like people have 30, 40,000 likes and people on their thing. I think I have like 2,500 maybe. And they're all my friends. I just about know everybody. That's a blessing. So thank you. I probably said it 100 times already, but I mean that stuff. Hey, check out the website, blackmanwiththegun.com. I made some changes there. There's a couple of posts about Comic-Con, the Baltimore Comic-Con. My man Evan did a roving reporter thing and got some really good interviews. I still got 3 more to put up. There's folks dressed in cosplay. It's really cool. Also, I got a page for affiliates and just something new I'm trying to do to support the site so I don't have to beg so much. But if you can, check it out. A couple of days ago, I sent up a note saying, support me on the podcastawards.com. They have 2 categories, either best produced or people's choice. Either one. I'm just trying to get nominated at this point. I think there's a process that goes after that where you have to vote every day and all that stuff. But I don't know. I don't even know whether I can impose on you to do that. But there's a new media expo about 2 weeks before the Shooting, Hunting, and Outdoor Trade Show that I'll be going to. And actually, I'm speaking on the power of niche in marketing. And it'd be nice to get an award while I'm there. Huh. As he slowly loses his voice. It's back. Hey, thinking about suicide? I'm here to tell you that you're not alone. If you need some help in the U.S., please call 1-800-273-8255. That's the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. SuicidePreventionLifeline.org. 1-800-273-8255. You are not alone. Hey, quick shout out to all my Candy Crush and Words with Friends. You guys make me, y'all fill in all the slow spots on my day. I appreciate that. Hey, if you're a cigar smoker located in the PG area, that's Prince George's County of Maryland, or Calvert County or Anne Arundel County, check out the new Affilion Cigar Lounge. It's behind the Blue Dolphin seafood restaurant, and it's pretty spectacular back there. Big old place. Also, there's Titan Cigar and Cigar Lounge, the Tinderbox down in Waldorf. Within probably about 20 minutes of each other, there's 3 cigar places. So a lot of cigar smoking going around me. Just letting you know that. And if you just can't stand cigars, then that wasn't for you. Well, that's it for this week. Thanks for rolling with a brother. If you want to contact me, my voicemail is 888-675-0202. My email is blackmanwithagun@gmail.com. The show notes and all media links can be found on blackmanwithagun.com. Check out the affiliates, the blog, and sign up on the contact list that I have there. If you like what you heard, please tell somebody. And until we meet again, shalom, baby.